Namaste.
Namaste.
The stillness feels so good. Okay, anyone have any questions? Or anything care to share? Okay, Ed.
Ramana, I appreciate this opportunity to be able to come up and request that you share about something. And I suppose that I come up here to be with you on behalf of myself and on behalf of inmates that are incarcerated in both prison and in jails throughout the country that we have been corresponding with, especially in the last year and a half, and in which the inmates have written to us requesting materials from us regarding our teaching and regarding the practice of self-inquiry. And what's been coming up lately in reading several letters and being with two inmates specifically, and even in my own life, are certain patterns that I've been seeing. Not that the pattern is necessarily bad or good, and not to stereotype a particular inmate or over another inmate. But what's been coming up is this phrase, prisoner to the mind, or prisoner of the mind. And a few of the patterns that I've been seeing is that especially for two inmates that I can recall right now, is that they feel like their situation is so insane in their particular prisons, and I don't have much of a feel for really the level of insanity that they're speaking about, but I'm sure you could relate with that. That is so insane that they can't find. It's just too difficult to meditate, too difficult to engage in self-inquiry. Then there is a large percentage of inmates that write to us, and I get the perception or the feeling that their spiritual growth in finding out who and what they really are is based upon reading books as opposed to sticking with a particular practice. So it becomes very difficult for them to take that first step and initiate the process of inquiry. And for me, it feels that they're perpetuating being a prisoner to the mind, and although they're incarcerated as a prisoner in this facility, that in a sense, bring a prisoner to the mind, in a sense, is maybe much greater has a greater degree of suffering than where they are in this facility. Because a few inmates seem that they are able to grab hold of the process, or the I am centering process, and those few that grab hold of it, at least according to being with their letters and some of our volunteers that are corresponding with them, those few are finding some peace even in prison. So if you would share about this being a prisoner to the mind and all that it entails, and maybe the facets of it, or the strategies in keeping one locked into this man-made prison, and then the mechanism for breaking through that prison, would be much appreciated.
Okay. The term prisoner of the mind is pretty apropos term. Yet it too is just a concept. The fact is that everyone who is identified with their body and the conditioned patterns of their mind in the form of thought and the externalized flow of their attention onto the persons and places and things around them that form their world, each one in that state of consciousness is a prisoner to their mind. It really doesn't matter where their physical body happens to be abiding, whether one is actually, in the case of the inmates that you're referring to, incarcerated in a prison or jail, or whether they are living in a mansion somewhere in the city or the country, or on a large estate, or just anywhere in ordinary surroundings. The main point is that anyone who's identified with the body and the mind and the externalized flow of consciousness is at the effect of consciousness in that configuration. Can we all get this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In a manner of speaking, now, I can't truly say I understand all of the situations and circumstances that prison inmates are all undergoing, or where the living conditions. I do hear from the news occasionally the overcrowded situation of many of the prisoners today. And so under those circumstances, I can understand that it may not be the most conducive ordinarily for meditation, or let's say meditation in the ordinary sense of the word. Meaning meditation that would ordinarily require a person to sit and be quiet and be still, and then intentionally indraw or turn the mind in to the source of consciousness itself. That would be very difficult if you're not having an adequate, proper environment in which to do that. I realize there has been a time, at least as far as I can understand, than when maybe the prisons were not as crowded as they are today, where a person had a cell, maybe 1 or 2 people to a cell, and they would have a better opportunity actually to, you might say, convert their prison's environment into an ashram, and concentrate their attention on meditation and utilize that environment, that situation, intentionally for the purpose of transcending their circumstances, their mind, and their mind. I can't necessarily speak for other methods of meditation. Let's say I can't speak authoritatively for other methods of meditation because I don't use any other method of meditation, at least I didn't in the last years of my life, other than inquiry. And what I do know about other methods of meditation, I realize that it's very difficult to meditate if you have to have a special posture, a special time of the day, a special quiet environment in which to do it. That would be very difficult and in some cases almost impossible to do. But in the case of self-inquiry, that requires no particular posture, requires no particular set of circumstances, requires no special environment, but requires only one's intention to investigate, to observe, to tune their attention into the source of thought itself. In that regard, self-inquiry can be and should be done under all circumstances, at all times, and all places. Every situation offers an opportunity. Every event, every upset, every thought presents the opportunity for one to inquire into the source of consciousness itself. That's what self-inquiry is about. What is self-inquiry? Simply tracing consciousness, the sense of I, to its point of origin within oneself, diving into that source of consciousness from which the I rises, and remaining there. What does that require? It requires a resolve. It requires dedication. It requires commitment. It requires one to choose to do so. What will motivate one to do so? To a certain degree, the level of spiritual maturity that one has realized. The degree of suffering through which one is undergoing can be a motivator. And it would seem that inmates in prison are undergoing quite a bit of suffering. So that motivation ought to be there. That degree of resolve ought to be there. Otherwise, what is the alternative, you know? The suffering of the environment in which they live, the chaos and the confusion in which they find themselves. Whereas if one can and does abide in the true nature of their being, into the source of consciousness itself, or what we call in a hum the I am, pure being, that is the location of peace, freedom, and true joy. We're talking here about peace, freedom, and joy untainted by their opposites. Stillness, freedom from thought, freedom from upset, freedom from suffering and sorrow. The realization occurs when one has reached a degree of maturity in the inquiry that the I am, their own source of consciousness, is not different from God. We were just today with the staff meeting, it was coming up that if one will give their attention to God and give it their attention steadily, consistently, and regularly, you can rest assured that God will give his or her attention to the devotee. When one can know that one has God's attention, that in itself gives a calming, peaceful, and freeing experience. Can we all relate to that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The realization of Moses, his own enlightenment experience, which is recorded in the Bible in Exodus 3:14, the only place in the entire Bible, Old or New Testament, written in capital letters, was Moses' realization that his own consciousness was not different. His own consciousness, or the sense of I am, was not different from the being of God. And even though it is interpreted by many people as being God speaking through Moses, which it was, God, it went on to say in that realization, or the higher self went on to say that I am, again in capital letters, capital I, capital A-M, I am is my name and shall be my name forever, for all generations to come. The name of God is I am. This means that I am itself is not a thought of the mind. Now, everyone uses the term or the statement or has the experience in tuning in with himself and the feeling of I am or I amness. Whether we realize it or not, any time and every time that we tune in to consciousness and the feeling of I am, we right there in that moment have transcended the mind, because that I am is not a thought in the mind. That I am is one's own infinite and eternal nature. If one would just meditate on that very notion openly and surrender to that quality of being, which rises from the very core and source of one's being and is felt in the heart and core of one's being, that is the highest form of meditation there is. And one can do that with one's eyes open. One can do that while active. It doesn't matter where they are or what they're doing or who's around them. No one can stop one. No one can stop you from tuning in to your own sense of being, your own sense of existence itself. And that's all that anyone has to do, whether they're a prison inmate or whether they're a businessman or woman living in the world, or whether you're driving down the road in your automobile, or whether you're talking on the telephone with someone. You can turn your consciousness, tune your consciousness into your own feeling of your own being, to your own sense of being, to the I am, to the feeling of I am. Do it now. Can't we all tune into this right now? Do it now. Feel I am. Don't think I am, even though that might be what you think that you're doing. Okay, do that too, but feel that you exist. Can you actually deny your existence? Can anyone deny his or her existence?
No.
By simply tuning in to the fact that you exist and acknowledging that you exist and feeling that you exist, when you feel you exist with the conscious feeling, the intentional feeling of I am, I exist and I am here, even though you may want to project that notion, that idea on your body and say your body is here, is it your body that is actually saying that?
No.
No, it's not your body that is saying that. You're saying, I have a body. Your body does not say, I have a you. Do we get this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that in itself is meditation. That is the self-inquiry meditation. It's a form of it. But the true self-inquiry meditation is to acknowledge that when thought is happening, it must be occurring somewhere, and it must be occurring in the one who's thinking. For thought to happen, there must be a thinker. Where is this thinker occurring? Where is it coming from? Who is this thinker? If you give your attention over to investigating and inquiring into the one who thinks, tracing that flow of consciousness inward, that flow of consciousness actually on its own is going outward. It's flowing in an externalized direction due to the habit of body, mind, and world identification. So it's moving in an outward direction. It's going in an outward flow. You just simply go upstream. Go upstream, and you can do that while you're talking to someone. I'm having a conversation with someone. Who's having this conversation? You can be saying this or asking this of yourself, and the person that you're having the conversation may not know anything about it. And you can actually do this process. Who's having this conversation? And know within yourself, silently say within yourself, notice within yourself, I'm having this conversation. You can feel the I that you are that is having this conversation. You're knowing that you're existing. You're saying that the other person is also there existing. The other person is not saying I am here existing. It is you saying the other person is existing. Even if the other person is there saying I am existing, you have to be there first to know that they are there saying they are existing, so you are there existing knowing that they are there saying that they are existing. If it were not for you, they wouldn't even be existing. At least to you, and we're talking about you, we're talking about the world that you feel identified with, and the body that you feel is living in the world that you're identified with. This in itself is the background, is the basis upon which we do the inquiry process. It's recognizing that the consciousness that I am, the sense of I am, that this consciousness I am itself must be before the sense of you, or she, or him, or her, or them, or that, or this or that, can even exist. Do we get this? In other words, the first person singular must exist before second and third persons exist. And included in second and third persons would even be the concept we have of God as a being. God does not come to us and say, I exist, notice me. We're the ones that say that God exists, that we conceive of God as existing. And even if someone says they've had a vision or an experience of God, they still have to be there to be the one who had the vision or the experience of God. Just simply see that. Again, these are the bases, the guidelines of inquiry. And it doesn't matter who the person is or where the person is, they can consider this, contemplate this, give their attention to this. And as a matter of fact, those inmates that are in prison, what would be more pleasant to give their attention to than this? Than having to give their attention to the environment and the chaos and the confusion that is going on around them. And no one can stop them from doing this. Even the guards, the warden can't stop them. The chaplain can't stop them. No one can stop them. None of the other inmates can stop them from doing this process if they are choosing to do this process. Does everyone understand this?
Yes.
So it's only they that can stop them from themselves from doing this process. That means then if they really want to be free, all they have to do is to do this process. Now they have to then come into grips with themselves and ask themselves this question and be willing to tell themselves the truth. Am I willing to go through this process? Is it important enough to me to go through this process to transcend this mind that I feel imprisoned by and get prior to it, beyond it, and free of it? Because it is up to me. It is up to me. I'm the one that has to do it. I'm the one who created this mind. This mind did not come from outside. This mind is arising from inside. This mind that seems to be engulfing me is occurring inside me. And it's up to me to transcend this mind. And I can transcend this mind if I choose to. Now, it certainly will produce faith to know that many have done it. Many of them are under similar and sometimes maybe even worse conditions have done so. It can be done. Don't even give rise to the notion that it can't be done, or don't give rise to the notion that it's difficult, because that's one of the thoughts itself that is going on in the mind that is continuing to imprison the person into the mind. The mind itself, what is it? The mind is nothing more than a pattern of thoughts. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi said that it's a bundle of thoughts. Now the bundle of thoughts we have become identified with, And we may open the bundle and get involved in each one of the thoughts. Or we could say that the mind is a stream of conditioned patterns of thoughts. And we get involved with the stream of thoughts. We get involved with each and every one of the individual thoughts as individuals, giving our attention to the individual thoughts, and we get entrapped by those thoughts. That's how we get imprisoned in the mind, by giving our attention to the thoughts occurring in the mind. To be free, whether if free from while in prison, the prison of the mind is the primary prison anyway. To be free of this prison of the mind is to be free of thoughts. You cannot be upset without having the thought of upset. You may say, well, my body is imprisoned. How do you know your body is imprisoned unless you're thinking that your body is imprisoned, unless you're knowing it with thought? You say, well, it's a fact. I don't have to think about it. That may be a point, that may be a true fact at this point, but somewhere along the line it was thought. It was thought that put us in prison of the mind. It was thought that put an inmate in prison in a physical sense. It was thought. So the real prison, the actual prison, is the prison of the mind. It is the prison to thought. And in that sense, I guess I've said it already, but in that sense it doesn't matter where the person lives, whether in a federal, state, or county prison or jail, or anywhere free in the world, they still, if they are at the effect of the thoughts, they are in the prison of their mind. This process, this meditation, will free you from the prison of your mind. But again, what is required? To start with, an intellectual acceptance, an intellectual understanding and acceptance that you must be conscious before you can be conscious of anything. If you are not conscious, if it's an inmate, they couldn't be hearing this if it's a taped recording of my saying these words, or they couldn't be reading it if it's a transcribed written statement of these words, unless they're conscious. We must be conscious before we can be conscious of this or that or the other. Consciousness must be before anything else can be. What is consciousness? What do we call consciousness? What do we call consciousness? We call consciousness I. Do we not?
Yeah.
It's the self. The self is conscious. The mind only has a borrowed consciousness. The mind is the I thought, but the I am is the pure awareness prior to consciousness that gives rise to the mind and to the I thought and to the world. That's the configuration of consciousness. That's how it works. From the world's point of view, there is a body. There are objects, other people, other events going on around us, and we are aware of those events. We're cognizant of those events. We see these objects, we see these persons, places, and things. We give thought to them. We notice them in our awareness. That is itself mind. We follow this mind that is thinking about these objects back to the source of mind itself, which is the I, is the one that is aware of them. Follow the I back to where it originates, and we'll come into the awareness of The pure awareness itself, or let's say before we get to the awareness, is just the consciousness out of which the mind rises, and the sense of I am, which is a reflection of the pure awareness of being. The pure awareness of being has no sense of I. It doesn't even say I am. It is that out of which the I am as consciousness is reflected, is expressed. Prior to consciousness of I am is the awareness that makes possible the consciousness of I am. The pure being that we all are, timeless, faceless, formless awareness. Quiet, still, silent. And we can all awaken to it by giving attention to it, by following the I thought back into the awareness of pure I, and being still and quiet in this awareness that we are. And that itself is the location of peace. The nature of that is free. And the joy of that is the happiness, the bliss of the self. Imbibe of it right now in this moment. Choose to withdraw your attention into the source out of which attention can attend to anything. And simply pivot your attention onto the stillness out of which it arises. Pivot and focus your attention on the stillness of being. Thoughtless awareness. Faceless, formless, timeless, spaceless awareness. And you're already free of the mind. You're free of the mind if you do not allow attention to return to objective objects in the world, persons, places, things, thoughts, and events in the world. This is a choice that you must make. If you make this choice to keep your attention turned, pivoted, and turned and attending inward on the source of consciousness, and develop this as a new habit, opposed to the habit of the outward flow of consciousness, objectivity, over objectivity, choose subjectivity. Choose to subject yourself to this pure awareness of being. Surrender to this pure awareness once you become aware that you are this awareness. Surrender to this notion. It is the truth. The Master Jesus says, when you know the truth will make you free. This is the freedom that passes all understanding. This is the peace that passes all understanding. This is the joy that passes all understanding. Bypassing all understanding means it's totally unreasonable. It's unreasonable freedom, unreasonable peace, and unreasonable joy. It has no reason. It just is. It's not the result of something. It's not because of this or because of that. It's the very nature of the being that we all are. Just like the nature of fire is heat, just like the nature of ice is cold, The nature of the awareness, the pure awareness that we are, is already free, already peace, and already joy. That is the self, the true self that we all are, our true nature, is that which everyone is seeking. That's the reason why we're all seeking it. We're seeking our true nature. We're seeking who and what we are. And it's like we're lost in a strange land, a strange world of our own, unconsciously of our own making. We think that someone else has made this world, and we are a prisoner in it. That's not true. We have made our own world, and we're a prisoner of the world of our own making. We're like the silkworm caught up in the cocoon of our own making. In order to be free, Bhagavan Ramana used to say, go back to where you came from and go back the way you came. You came from the source, from the self, from the I am, and you came on a stream of thought, or you might say a thread of thought, and that thread of thought is I. This I is externalized on and identified with the body, with the world and all the persons, places, and things in the world that are manifesting as a result of the consciousness that we all are as the world. We must now trace this thread of consciousness, this I, back upstream to its source. That's how we go back to where we came from, and we go back up the stream, following this stream of consciousness, or this thread of consciousness, however way you can see it, grasp it. Hold on to it with your attention and follow it inward back to the source of consciousness itself, and thereby, therein, you might say, dive into that source of consciousness. Merge with that source of consciousness. Realize your oneness with that source of consciousness. That your own I am, like Moses' realization, is not different from the I am that is God. Not different than the Master Jesus when he said, I and the Father are one. I and the Father, the source. I and the source are one. He who has seen me has seen the Father. He who has seen the I and followed into the source has seen the source. Jesus was not talking about himself exclusively. He was sharing his own experience, his own insight, his own realization. And he shared it in the form of first person singular because it was his experience, and so he made it available to everyone else in that fashion, in that form. But the biblical scholars have not seen it that way. They think that he was meaning himself exclusively. He was not meaning himself exclusively. He was meaning all of us inclusively. We all can do the same thing. We can all trace our own consciousness back to the source of consciousness in exactly the same manner in which Jesus did. And no one can stop us from doing that. Pilate could not stop Jesus from doing that. The Sanhedrin could not stop Jesus from doing that. The guards who flogged Jesus could not stop Jesus from doing that. Jesus could hold his consciousness into the source of consciousness and thereby tolerate the most excruciating pain, including the pain of death, by simply abiding in the pure awareness of being that was there even prior to the body, and is there infinitely and eternally, just as Jesus realized that it was when he said, Even before Abraham was, I am. The same I am. The same I am that we all are. Follow your own thread of consciousness, your own stream of consciousness inward to this pure awareness of being that we all are. This is inquiry. And once you become steady with the process, every time a thought rises, ask, who's having this thought? Every time you are aware that you have been distracted by thoughts of persons, places, and things, or objects in the world, ask, who is this happening to? Who's having this thought? The only answer is I am. I'm having this thought. Hold on to the I that is having the thought. If you stay firm in the I that is having the thought, grasping the I that is having a thought, the thought with your attention, and staying with just that single I thought, the other thought that you were having, you see, every other thought has the I thought in it as the common denominator of that thought. Holding on to that I thought, you can let go of the other thought, the secondary thought, stay with this primary thought, this I thought, and continue to trace it and follow it inward to the source from which it is radiating or shining or rising. This is the inquiry. And either inmate or so-called free man, anyone can do this. It doesn't matter how much confusion or chaos there is going on around you. It could be a person working in a machine shop. It could be a person working in a metal shop that is banging and banging and banging and banging going on all day long. You can still know that you exist, and that prior to all of the banging, you are aware. Who's aware of the banging? I am. I'm aware of the banging. Hold on to the I that is aware of the banging and follow the I inward, and you will find a place of peace in which you can attend to the peace and not even give any attention to the banging. The confusion and the chaos can still be going on, but it's not affecting you if you're remaining in the pure awareness of being. And again, anyone can do this no matter who they are or where they are if they simply choose to. Yes, it takes resolve, it takes dedication, it takes perseverance. But I ask you, especially if you're imprisoned and incarcerated, what is the alternative? To still have to deal with and be caught up and at the effect of the chaos and the confusion? Which would you rather have, that or the peace of the inner being that is there, immediately present, waiting for you to just turn and give your attention to it? It's your choice. You have to make it. It's your resolve. You have to have it. It's your intention. You have to be the one who intends to do so. But if you'll do that, the peace that passeth all understanding is right there, just prior to thought, just waiting for you to embrace it, just waiting for you to choose it, just waiting for you to call it up from within you. And freedom and joy. Ed, you had several points that you were asking. I don't know whether I've covered them all. If I haven't, you might remind me of what I might still need to say.
The way I see it is that you did cover them. And whenever I was thinking of the next point, you went into it. Thank
Yes,
you, Ron.
Vivian.
Can you speak about how acceptance and self-inquiry are connected? That the acceptance of being where they are, where the inmates are?
All right. Acceptance is a deep inquiry in itself. Simply stated, wherever one is where one is. They are not somewhere else. Do we all get that?
Yes.
Wherever we are is where we are. Whatever we're engaged in the moment is what we're engaged in the moment. We're not engaged in anything else. In the moment, as the moment is what is. Since it is what is, if we resist it, we're not in accord with it, are we? So what is the way to be in accord with it? To simply acknowledge it as it is and accept that that's what's so in the moment. And immediately, if we acknowledge that that's what's so in the moment and accept what is in the moment as it is in the moment, we now are in harmony with it, and it is not pressing against us and we're not pressing against it. And now we're free to possibly modify it or maybe make a change with regard to it, or at least to be able to be with it in a harmonious way. But if we are not accepting of what is in the moment, if we're resisting what is in a moment, then we're in conflict with what is in the moment, and whatever you're in conflict with, paradoxically appears to be in conflict with you. And as long as you remain in conflict with it, it will be apparently in conflict with you. Do we get that? So the simplicity of the process and of the principle is, wherever you are, whenever you are, acknowledge that that's where you are, tell the truth that that's where you are, and in the moment accept it. Accept where you are, accept what is going on with you in the moment that is going on with you, because in the moment that it is going on with you, that is what is going on with you. So acknowledge it and tell the truth about it and accept it, and you will not be in conflict with it, and it will not be in conflict with you. That's a very freeing principle. Yes, it may be a fact that, for example, prison inmates are in prison and they might find it very hard to accept. But they will find a degree of freedom, the freedom of being in prison to the mind, above and beyond the incarceration of the body. That is a double bind. That is a double prison. That's a double lock-in. So to be free of your mind, which is to be free of your resistance to being in prison, at least you know that you are in prison, and you can be free while in prison of your mind if you will accept the fact that, yes, I am in prison. So by accepting that I am in prison, that's what's so. That's the fact. If I can come to a high degree of acceptance of this, meaning that I'm going to quit resisting the fact that I'm in prison and accept the fact that I am in prison, a mystical and magical release happens in the core of your being. And you do not feel the conflict, the contradiction, and all the confusion that is otherwise there in the mind by your resistance to the situation that you're finding yourself in. Do we all get this?
Yes.
Can you feel it?
Yes.
Choose it and use it on yourself. What are you caught up in? What are you having difficulty with? Anger? Resentment? Acknowledge, I am angry. Don't give a thought to what I think caused me anger. What does that accomplish? The fact is, if you're angry, you're angry. Acknowledge that you're angry. Accept the fact that you're angry. And see that it's okay. You say, well, it's just not okay that I'm angry. Well, then suffer. But if you acknowledge that you're angry, accept that you're angry, that anger is what's so with me right now, then the sting of anger, the bind of anger, the heat of anger will loosen, will cool down, and you can actually be with the situation itself and find the way to be free of whatever it is that apparently was causing you the anger. Do we all get this? I hope that this has been beneficial. And I hope that the inmates who either hear this or read this find peace, freedom, and joy. Freedom from the prison of their own mind. Namaste.
Namaste.